They laughed when the cleaning lady said she'd buy their most expensive car. Nobody was laughing when she bought all 47. Subscribe to US Stories and turn on the notification bell for more powerful stories. The rain pelted against Maria's windshield as she pulled into the parking lot of Prestige Motors, the city's most exclusive luxury car dealership. At 52, she had spent the last 3 decades building her cleaning business from nothing, scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans until her hands were raw and her back ached. But today was different. Today, she wasn't here to clean. Her daughter Sophia was graduating medical school next month, and Maria wanted to surprise her with something special. Not just any car, but something that would show the world that her little girl had made it, that they both had made it. The automatic doors slid open with a whisper, and Maria stepped into a world of polished marble and gleaming chrome. The scent of leather and new car wax filled the air. Luxury vehicles sat like sleeping giants under perfectly positioned spotlights, their paint jobs reflecting the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. She wore her best dress, the navy blue one she saved for church and special occasions. But even her best couldn't hide the calluses on her hands or the weariness in her eyes that came from 20 years of working 2 jobs to put her daughter through school. A young salesman with perfectly styled hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes approached her. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone polite but distant. "Yes, I'm looking for a car for my daughter. Something nice. She's graduating medical school and—" "Ma'am, I think you might be in the wrong place," he interrupted gently. "We specialize in luxury vehicles here. The Honda dealership is about 5 miles down the road. They have some very reasonable options." Maria's cheeks burned, but she kept her voice steady. "I understand what kind of dealership this is. I'd like to look at your cars." The salesman glanced nervously toward the back office where a tall man in an expensive suit was watching their interaction with obvious displeasure. That was Rick Cromwell, the dealership manager, and he was already walking over. "Is there a problem here, Johnson?" Rick's voice cut through the showroom like a blade. "No problem, Mr. Cromwell. I was just explaining to this lady that she might be more comfortable at one of the other dealerships in town." Rick looked Maria up and down, his eyes lingering on her worn shoes and the small stain on her dress that she hadn't noticed until this morning. His lip curled in disgust. "Ma'am, I'm going to be direct with you because I don't have time to waste. Do you see these cars?" He gestured broadly at the showroom. "The least expensive vehicle we have starts at $70,000. Now, I don't want to embarrass you, but it's clear you're not our target demographic." Maria felt her throat tighten. "I have money." Rick actually laughed, a harsh sound that made several other customers turn to stare. "I'm sure you do. Grocery money, rent money, but these aren't grocery store purchases. These are investments for people who've earned the right to own them." "The right?" Maria's voice was barely a whisper. "Look, lady, I can tell just by looking at you that you probably make more in a year cleaning office buildings than these cars cost. And that's fine. That's honest work. But don't come in here wasting my time pretending you can afford something. You clearly can't." The showroom had gone quiet. Other customers were staring now, some with pity, others with the uncomfortable fascination people have when witnessing someone else's humiliation. Maria felt the familiar shame creeping up her neck, the same feeling she'd carried for years when people looked at her like she was invisible, like she didn't matter. "I think you should leave," Rick continued, his voice getting louder. "Before you embarrass yourself further." Maria turned to go, her vision blurring with unshed tears. But as she reached the door, she stopped. In her purse was a letter from her accountant, paperwork she'd been meaning to review. Her cleaning business had grown beyond her wildest dreams. What had started as one woman with a bucket and mop had become the largest commercial cleaning service in the state, with contracts in 6 major cities and annual revenues that would make Rick Cromwell's jaw drop. But more than that, she thought of Sophia, her brilliant, beautiful daughter who had overcome every obstacle, who had studied by candlelight when the Electricity was turned off. Who had worn second-hand clothes to school but never let anyone make her feel small? If she walked out now, she wasn't just accepting Rick's judgment of her. She was accepting the world's judgment of people like her, people who worked with their hands, people who built something from nothing. Maria turned back around. "Actually, I've changed my mind. I would like to buy a car." Rick rolled his eyes. "Ma'am, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." "What's your most expensive car?" Johnson shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, our flagship model is the McLaren 720S. It's $310,000. "I'll take it." Rick's laugh was even louder this time. "You'll take it? Just like that? Do you even know what that car costs? That's more than most people make in 5 years." Maria pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. The numbers on the screen made her pause for just a moment. 23 years of 7-day weeks, of missed dinners and postponed vacations, of reinvesting every penny back into the business. All of it had led to this moment. "I'll pay cash," she said quietly. "Cash?" Rick was still smirking. "Lady, you couldn't pay cash for the floor mats in that car. Would you like to see my bank statement?" The smirk faltered slightly. "Your bank statement?" Maria handed him her phone. Rick glanced at it dismissively, then looked again. His face went pale. This can't be right." Johnson peered over his shoulder and his eyes widened. "Mr. Cromwell, that says—" "I can see what it says," Rick snapped. He stared at the phone for a long moment, then looked up at Maria with new eyes. "What exactly do you do for a living?" "I clean things," Maria said simply. "I clean them very well." The next hour was a blur of paperwork and awkward apologies. Rick's demeanor had shifted completely, his earlier arrogance replaced by fawning, attention. But Maria wasn't done, not even close. "I'd like to buy another car," she announced as they finished the paperwork for the McLaren. "Another one?" Rick couldn't hide his excitement. His commission on one McLaren would pay his mortgage for 3 months. "Yes. What else do you have?" By the end of the day, Maria had purchased 4 cars. A Bentley Continental GT, a Porsche 911, Turbo S, a Mercedes AMG GT, and a BMW i8. Rick was practically glowing, his earlier dismissal forgotten in the face of the largest single-day sales total in the dealership's history. But Maria wasn't finished. She returned the next day and bought 3 more cars, then 4 the day after that. By the end of the week, she had purchased 17 luxury vehicles, each transaction more bewildering than the last. Rick couldn't understand it. Who needed 17 cars? But he wasn't about to question the best week of his career. The regional manager had already called to congratulate him. There was talk of a promotion, maybe even a chance to run the flagship store downtown. On Monday of the second week, Maria arrived with a different energy. She was dressed better now, in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Rick made in a month. Her hair was professionally styled, and she moved with the confidence of someone who had finally found their place in the world. "Good morning, Rick," she said cheerfully. "I hope you're ready for another big day." "Always ready for you, Mrs. Santos," Rick replied, his smile genuine now. "What catches your eye today?" "Everything," Maria said simply. "I want to buy every car on your lot." Rick's smile froze. "I'm sorry, what?" "Every car, every single vehicle you have. I want them all." "Mrs. Santos, that's impossible. We have over 30 cars here. The total value would be approximately $6.2 million, Maria finished. "I've done the math." Rick sat down heavily in his chair. "Mrs. Santos, I appreciate your business, I really do. But purchasing our entire inventory would require corporate approval, financing arrangements, logistics planning. I'll pay cash," Maria said again. "Same as always." 2 days later, the wire transfer went through. Maria Santos had officially Purchased every single vehicle in the Prestige Motors inventory. 47 cars in total, ranging from modest luxury sedans to $250,000 supercars. The story spread through the automotive world like wildfire. The cleaning lady who bought an entire dealership's worth of cars. Rick found himself the center of attention, fielding calls from industry magazines and local news stations. He was a celebrity, the salesman who had facilitated the largest individual car purchase in state history. The corporate executives were ecstatic. The regional manager called personally to offer Rick the promotion he'd been dreaming of for years. Everything was perfect. Until the call came on Friday afternoon. "Rick, we need to talk." The voice belonged to David Sterling, the regional vice president. "Can you come up to corporate today?" Rick drove to headquarters with a spring in his step. This was it, the moment his career really took off. He was shown into a conference room where Sterling waited with two other executives Rick didn't recognize. "Sit down, Rick," Sterling said, his voice strangely flat. "Thank you, sir. I have to say, this has been the most incredible week of my career. Mrs. Santos is an amazing client, and I think this really shows what we can accomplish when we—" "Rick, we know who Maria Santos is." Rick's smile faltered. "I'm sorry. We know who she is. More importantly, we know who she owns." The words didn't make sense. "Who she owns?" Sterling slid a folder across the table. Rick opened it to find corporate documents, business registrations, and financial statements. His eyes scanned the pages, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Santos Commercial Services. Founded 1998. Current contracts: Sterling Automotive Group Corporate Headquarters, Prestige Motors Downtown, Prestige Motors West Side, Prestige Motors North County. Rick's blood turned to ice. "She's been cleaning our offices for 15 years, Sterling continued. "Every night she and her crew come in after we go home. They empty our trash, vacuum our floors, clean our bathrooms. She knows more about our operations than most of our executives." The folder contained more documents: financial projections, expansion plans, confidential memos about Rick's own performance reviews, papers that should have been shredded, conversations that should have been private. "She knows everything, Rick. Our profit margins, our supplier relationships, our expansion plans. She's been listening to our meetings, reading our documents, learning our business inside and out." Rick's hands were shaking now. "What does this mean?" "It means," Sterling said quietly, "that Maria Santos doesn't just own 47 cars. She owns us." The next revelation hit Rick like a physical blow. Sterling opened another folder. This one containing a single document. "Yesterday, Maria Santos purchased a controlling interest in Sterling Automotive Group. She now owns 63% of our company." The room spun around Rick. "That's impossible. 23 years of building her business, Rick. 23 years of being invisible to people like us, of being dismissed and overlooked. Do you know what she told me when I called to congratulate her on the acquisition?" Rick couldn't speak. "She said, 'I've been cleaning up after men like you my entire life. Now I'm going to clean house.'" Rick's promotion evaporated in that moment. So did his job. "She specifically requested that we terminate your employment, Rick, effective immediately." The security guard who escorted Rick to his car was polite, but firm. As Rick cleaned out his desk, his hands trembling as he packed his personal items into a cardboard box, he couldn't stop thinking about that first day. The way he'd looked at Maria, the assumptions he'd made, the casual cruelty of his words. The story broke on social media first. A viral video filmed by a customer who had witnessed the original interaction. Within hours, Prestige Motors and Mark Marias were trending worldwide. The internet had found its new hero, and Rick had become its villain. The video showed everything: his dismissive attitude, his public humiliation of Maria, his laughter when she said she wanted to buy a car, but it also showed what happened next. Maria's quiet dignity, her refusal to be diminished, her extraordinary response to extraordinary disrespect. Rick's phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting his side of the story, former colleagues distancing themselves, his wife asking questions. He couldn't answer. His LinkedIn profile was flooded with angry messages. His photo appeared in articles with headlines like, "The Manager Who Learned What Happens When You Judge a Book by Its Cover." But the story wasn't over. 2 weeks after Rick's firing, Maria held a press conference outside Prestige Motors. She stood in front of the dealership wearing the same navy blue dress she'd worn that first day, surrounded by 47 gleaming luxury cars. "I didn't buy these cars because I needed them," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the parking lot. "I bought them to make a point. For 23 years, I've worked in the shadows. I've cleaned offices and bathrooms, emptied trash and mopped floors. I've been invisible to most of the people I serve." The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. But being invisible has its advantages. You learn things. You see how people really behave when they think no one is watching. You understand what they value, what they fear, what they really think about people like me. She paused, looking directly into the news cameras. Rick Cromwell looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong, someone who wasn't worthy of respect or consideration. He saw my clothes, my hands, my job, and he decided he knew everything about me. He was wrong. Maria gestured to the cars behind her. These cars represent more than transportation. They represent assumptions. They represent the barriers we put up between ourselves and others based on nothing more than appearances. They represent the cost of judging people by what they look like instead of who they are. The crowd was riveted. "I'm donating these cars to a scholarship fund for students from working-class families who want to pursue higher education. Each car will be sold, and the proceeds will help young people like my daughter achieve their dreams despite the Rick Cromwells of the world." The applause was thunderous. "But I want to be clear about something," Maria continued, her voice growing, stronger. "I didn't do this for revenge. I did this for recognition. Recognition that every person who works an honest job deserves respect. Recognition that success comes in many forms. Recognition that the person you dismiss today might be the person who owns your tomorrow." She looked directly at one of the cameras. "To anyone who's ever been made to feel small, who's ever been judged by their appearance or their occupation, who's ever been told they don't belong, you belong. Your work matters. Your dreams matter. And sometimes, just sometimes, you get the chance to prove it." The press conference ended with Maria walking back to her car, not one of the 47 luxury vehicles, but her reliable 10-year-old Honda Civic, the same car she'd driven to work every day for the past decade. As for Rick Cromwell, he never worked in car sales again. The viral video followed him everywhere, a digital scarlet letter that made him unemployable in the automotive industry. He eventually found work in a different field, but the lesson of Maria Santos followed him wherever he went. The Maria Santos Scholarship Fund became one of the largest educational foundations in the state, helping hundreds of students pursue their dreams regardless of their economic background. Each scholarship recipient received a letter with a simple message: "Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong." And every year, on the anniversary of that fateful day at Prestige Motors, Maria would drive past the dealership in her Honda Civic, windows down, radio up, a quiet smile on her face. She had learned the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you could never be. The 47 cars were just the beginning. Maria Santos had bought something far more valuable than luxury: vehicles. She had bought respect, recognition, and the right to be seen for who she truly was. And in doing so, she had given that same gift to countless others who had been invisible for far too long. In the end, Maria had done exactly what she'd promised. She had cleaned house. And the house had never been cleaner.